This is the first time in a while where I've sat down to record a video and just the amount of emotions going into it is enough to make me want to cry. Now, I miss Game Informer, right? Like back in the day, I used to get every single issue of Game Informer for years on end, and while this isn't the last issue that I got, because I did get a few more after this is one that I wanted to hone in on specifically, and it's one where, you know, I was digging through my bin of old Game Informer magazines, because I still have dozens of them from back in the day. And this was one where I was looking at it and I was like, you know what? This is the one that I want to look at, because not only is it an old Game Informer magazine, but it's also the one from E3 of 2017. And if you know anything about E3 of 2017, that was a crazy year. And this is the one that has the Hot 50. So, you know, I feel like I thought it would be pretty cool for us to dive in, sort of look through and be like, hey, what were like the Hot 50 games of E3 from 2017 in this Game Informer magazine? Because now at this point, Game Informer is defunct, E3 is no more, at least at this current point in time. Who knows, they might have like a G4 thing one day where, like, you know, G4 try to have a comeback, but I feel like with E3, that would actually be successful if they tried to come back, so who knows, hopefully in the future that can happen. And there's another more personal reason as to why this is so, I don't know, I guess such an emotional issue for me to go through. This would have been like the last E3 and Game Informer E3 magazine from that year where I was still seeing my father. You know, my father's still alive, but me and him just, you know, around like 2017-ish, we just kind of, you know, cut off contact. Me and him just... It's one of those things where we didn't necessarily get along anymore. Well, if for anybody that knows my past, me and him never really got along to begin with, but that's just where things got even worse. So, you know, that was just around the time where I decided to cut off contact with him because I couldn't partake in that toxic relationship anymore. But I don't know. Again, this is one of the last magazines that I remember him getting for me and handing to me. So there's a bit of emotion going into this because of that, but gonna restrain myself, focus on the positivity, focus on the reminiscing and the nostalgia, and let's go ahead and flip through this old Game Informer magazine together. Now, I know that this is far from being the most ideal setup in the world, but I don't know how, like, you know, I've been talking about getting an overhead camera and a bigger table to do videos like this, but that's still a ways away, and I didn't want to wait on making this video because, again, this is one that I've been waiting to do for a while. So hopefully you guys can at least see most of the magazine, see most of the pictures. I'll try to glance at the camera every now and again just to make sure everything's still in frame, still looking decent, and I apologize for the glare as well. I know the lighting isn't the best situation in the world, but we're doing what we can. I'll try to fill up as most of the picture as possible. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and go to the beginning of the magazine, which, oh yeah, we're actually already at the beginning of it. Pros score more. Save 50 on an MSI VR1 backpack PC. Save $15 on Seagate 2TB hard drives. Man, remember when, like, hard drives are the way we start our games? Now it has to be, like, SSDs or else it doesn't work. Like, even on a PS5, you can plug in a hard drive to, like, store your PS4 games, and you can technically keep PS5 games on there, but you have to actually run them off the SSD in order to actually, like, play the games. E3, a first step. Man, yeah, 2017 was a huge year for E3, and we're gonna read why. So this year's E3 is definitely one for the record books, but more with a whimper than a shout. Wow, starting off positively, I see. The most important thing that happened at E3 2017 was opening the doors to consumers, the gamers that drive this industry forward. Though, from what I saw, most attendees were fulfilling a dream of going to E3 rather than partaking in a truly great consumer experience. Man, who is this guy? Andy McNamara? Like, dude, you are being so negative. Well, why is he being so negative? As we're going to be getting to, E3 this year was, like, absolutely insane, but I don't know, this is just negative video game journalism being negative as always, because even though you'd think with video game journalism, considering the fact that they're, you know, being journalists for a hobby that's all about just, you know, having fun, being happy, having a good time, video game journalists just find ways to be pessimistic, negative, and critique things that don't even need to be critiqued, or just find ways to be negative about things that aren't even negative or shouldn't be negative anyway. I don't know, I'm sorry, I hate video game journalism and those, like, video game news sites and all that. Most of the expo is still set up with industry professionals in mind, as most booths lacked enough kiosks for play and not enough space for the masses to move. That is one thing. They definitely improved on that on the last couple years of E3. Obviously, I never got to go in person, but from, like, what I've heard and what I've read online, like, there was definitely more of, like, the consumer interactivity kind of built into its last couple years, so it seems like that was something that kind of improved upon. But yeah, 2017, huge year, because that is when they kind of opened up the doors, more people were allowed to come in outside of just, you know, like, you know, whether that be, like, investors or business suits or such, you know, like, actual gamers were allowed to be there at E3. Oh man, you can tell this was written by a video game journalist. I think it is time for the consumers to define the show, but I hope we don't forget about the business side of the convention in the process. dude, just let people get excited about video games, man. I'm so sick of hearing about all the business nonsense. Just shut up. Like I said, I miss Game Informer, and I do miss a lot of this stuff, but man, there was those random times where you have like that one, you know, editor or journalist writing in here, and it's like, all right, dude, you're just going on about some goofy nonsense. Then they had this feedback section, you know, just like fans and other people writing into the magazine, giving their feedback on things, and then over here on the next page, we, man, some of these ads in here, Geico, the choice is yours and it's simple, and then for some reason there's like chicken wings for the Geico commercial, okay. Look at this, we got the gallery in here with like fan art and stuff like that. Man, that is really cool. I really like that one too, where like Donkey Kong is like the Lady Liberty there with Mario and Luigi. That is so cool. Talking more about E3, because yeah, this was obviously a huge proportion of this magazine, just covering a lot of the stuff at E3. Then they go on to talk about the stuff with Microsoft, and this is the year where they had the Xbox One X coming out, which was a huge upgrade for the Xbox One. Then for Sony, we had stuff like Horizon Zero Dawn, more looks at God of War, Knack 2. Man, the Knack games are so underrated. Both Knack 1 and 2, I love those games to death. There was so much charm to those. Look at that, they're giving Sony a C+ for this year. What in the world are you even talking about? E3 had a great E3 that year. What about Xbox? Only got a C, even though they showed off the Xbox One X. Like I said, I miss Game Informer and I love Game Informer, but when it comes to like some of the journalists, it's just, again, when it comes to like video game journalism, when it comes to just like giving grades on games, critiquing things, talking about the business side of things, I can't stand it, and it makes me want to jump off a bridge with like 2-ton weights tied to my ankles. It drives me insane. Oh, look at that. At least they gave Nintendo a B, but again, Nintendo had a great E3 that year, so I have no idea what IGN, or not IGN, look at me, I'm thinking about IGN. No, I don't know what the folks over at Game Informer were smoking. The 8-bit DOS and S30 Pro, man, I remember that controller. The most fascinating trailers of E3 2017, and then they have something for Anthem. So you give Microsoft a C, you give Sony a C+, you give Nintendo a B, and then you say one of the most fascinating trailers was Anthem. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm one of the few people that has always defended Anthem and have said that it is actually a genuinely fun game. Like, I played through like the campaign of the game. I never really stuck around for endgame, but I went through like the story mode, beat it solo, had a ton of fun with it. Like, the gameplay felt great, it felt smooth, I mean, the game looked great graphically speaking, there was some great enemy variety, the loot and combat was satisfying. But at the same time, we all know what the reception was overall to the game, and you're gonna put that in the most okay. Beyond Good and Evil 2, with rumors swirling for over a decade. Dog, it's almost been a decade since this magazine was released. That is insane. The Evil Within 2, underrated game, love that game. Metro Exodus, another fantastic game. God of War, of course, a fantastic game. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, another underrated game right there. Hey Pikmin, dude, Hey Pikmin is such a gem in the Pikmin series. Let me tell you. Kingdom Hearts 3, Horizon Zero Dawn, The Frozen Wilds, great DLC right there. Code Vein. Code Vein is so cool, man. It's like an anime version of like a Souls game, essentially. Definitely check that one if you check that one out if you haven't before. I had a lot of fun with that game. Hidden Agenda. Let's see, what was coming out August 2017? Madden NFL 18. Oh boy, F1 2017. Uncharted Lost Legacy. Nice, love that game. Agents of Mayhem. That's another one that I feel like got dunked on a bit too much. I mean, I understand some people were probably expecting like the next Saints Row out of it, because even though the developers tried to say it wasn't the next Saints Row, it seemed like it was trying to still tie into the series in a way. Then you had like the Johnny Gat DLC, so it was just kind of feeling a bit confused by the time that the game came out. Like, okay, is this Saints Row? Is it not Saints Row? What's Johnny Gat doing here? But I still had fun with that game. It's a nice turn your brain off and shoot stuff type of game. City Skylines, that's a great city builder there. Matterfall is a PS4 hidden gem right there. Housemarque is one of my favorite Sony developers. Between games like that and Resogun and Returnal, like, I mean, obviously Returnal's more well known, but the other ones that I mentioned, like Resogun and Matterfall and all the other games that they've had their hands in, like, dude, they are insane. I love their games. That's one of those studios where I can point at them and be like, I know it's just all love and passion coming out of that studio and that dev team, because the games they make, they are just pure video games, pure arcadey fun. You can either just play through the main campaigns and story modes and call it there, or you can keep going, try to get set higher scores. You know, they're like super arcade arcadey, great for jumping in, jumping out, or playing them for hours on end. Love their games so much. And then, yeah, we're not going to go through all of this because there is a good bit here. But we got Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, amazing. Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, genuinely a great collection of Mega Man games. Sonic Mania, man, Yakuza Kiwami. That's pretty cool. They even had stuff here for like movie and TV premieres. Got stuff for like South Park, The Nut Job 2. The Hitman's Bodyguard was 2017. Dude, I swear that movie felt so much newer than 2017. I can't believe it's been literally almost 10 years since then. 7 years, going on 8 here soon. All right, now we're gonna, you know, I don't want to make this video too long here, but it seems like we have 50 games to go through. If this is, like, I'm pretty sure this is saying there's, yeah, it's looking like there's gonna be a good bit to go through. So we're gonna do our best. I might be wrong about that, but I mean, it says Hot 50. So first up, Super Mario Odyssey, one of the best 3D platformers of all time, one of my favorite Mario 3D platformers of all time. It is such a great game. Like, seeing Mario out in the real world like this was genuinely surreal, and at first I wasn't sure how that was gonna work. I was like, Mario in the real world, like, that's an interesting concept. Like, I was never necessarily in doubt about the game. I was just really curious to see how Nintendo would go about it. And yeah, it was really cool to see them pull it off, but still have a lot of the whimsical Mario settings in there, like, especially towards the end of the game, which I won't spoil, but that was really cool. And then it was almost like Mario Odyssey come to life by the time that we got the Super Mario Bros. Movie, where you saw Mario in the real world, like you kind of saw there in Odyssey. That's another thing I gotta say. I'm glad Nintendo has started dabbling with, like, movies and such, and giving us stuff like the Super Mario Bros. Movie. And it was really cool how not only did we get Mario in there, but we got other characters, obviously, like, you know, like Donkey Kong and all that, and they found ways to ties in, you know, like other franchises, like Mario Kart into it, basically, with, like, the driving sections and such. I love that movie, and I can't wait for the live-action Zelda one, which is going to be crazy. Going on to talk more about Mario Odyssey, it seems giving it a full 3 pages, which it definitely deserves. Spider-Man 2018. Oh man, this game was so good. I remember, I'm not gonna spoil anything here, but I always loved how it kind of seemed like, oh, Mr. Negative is gonna be the villain for this game, and then they kind of like pull a fast one on you towards the end, and things just go absolutely off the rails. I love it. Destiny 2, I actually still have my physical copy of Destiny 2, because I got it when it came out. You know, I paid like the full price for it on Xbox One, and I still have that copy. But then obviously, once they split off from Activision, went off to do their own thing, then they made the game free to play. But yeah, Destiny 2, it's a great game. There's been a lot done to it, obviously, with expansions, and I will say I don't agree with them vaulting content in the game, but I'll never forget the launch for Destiny 2. There was so much hype around that. Such a great game. Monster Hunter World, another one that speaks for itself. It's just so good. I'm so excited for Monster Hunter Wilds coming up. Star Wars Battlefront 2. It's a shame that EA handled things the way that they did with this game, because, you know, on the surface, I mean, Star Wars Battlefront 2, for anybody that's played the game, you know, it's a technically sound game. It's a lot of fun. The combat and the gameplay overall is just, it's addicting, it's satisfying, and it's just unfortunate that they squandered things so bad in the way that they did on the monetization side of things with all the loot boxes and all that, because if it wasn't for that, I assure you, Battlefront 2 would be alive and well to this day. And while it kind of is, you know, there's still a good bit of players on it, I feel like it easily would have been twice as, if not triple as popular nowadays if its name wouldn't have been squandered in the way that it was, with all the loot boxes and monetization. And I have a feeling that, I mean, it's been 7 years since this game released at this point, so if we were gonna get Battlefront 3, you feel like we would have got it by now, especially since the first Battlefront, like the reboot, basically, for this series, came out just a few years before this one did, so having a 7-year gap between this game and then Battlefront 3, yeah, I don't know, I don't think we're ever gonna be getting another one, which is a shame, because if anything, EA really only has themselves to blame for being so greedy in the way that they were with the monetization, and not only being greedy, but defending themselves when questioned about it in interviews and all that, being like, oh, we want players to feel achieved for spending money in game. It's like, no, dude, you're just being greedy. Call of Duty World War II, easily one of the most underrated Call of Duty games. The campaign in that game, the mission Liberation, dude, that is one of the most memorable missions in any Call of Duty campaign ever. I love when they do stuff like that, whether it be in that game, or they had a similar mission in Cold War, or other times when they try to switch it up, like Alone in the new Modern Warfare 2 2022. That is easily my favorite mission from the new Modern Warfare 2 as well. Just, I love when they try to switch things up there. And the multiplayer was a lot of fun. It was still arcadey, but still, you know, going back to that, like, World War II vibes. Definitely not as gritty as World at War from '08, but still a fantastic World War II game. And the zombies was great, man, especially with, like, the first couple maps, like Groston House and the Final Reich. Absolutely love Call of Duty World War II. I actually just revisited it last year before the new Modern Warfare 3 came out for, like, a solid 2 or 3 weeks. I just grinded the game nonstop. shop, unlocked a couple cosmetics and all that, just went through Prestige a couple times, and it was an absolute blast. Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, obviously the new Wolfenstein games are great. I actually really like Youngblood as well. I know that one's pretty divisive, but I love that game, and yeah, man, if you haven't played the Wolfenstein games, I mean, they're on Game Pass as well as PlayStation Plus. If you have either of those consoles, you don't have an excuse. Furthermore, Wolfenstein 2 always goes... Oh, I just knocked the camera out of the way. Sorry. Wolfenstein 2 always goes on sale in the eShop for like $6. So, I mean, like, you can get it on any platform. It's also always going on sale on Steam, like either of the games, either the first or the second one. So, definitely try those games out if you haven't before. They're great. Mario & Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Man, I love this game so much. And this is one of those times where I would say if you're going to buy this game, you need to buy the DLC. The DLC where you're able to play as like Donkey Kong and Cranky Kong and basically carry out the same gameplay but within the Mario & Rabbids universe. Man, it is so cool. I love it. And this game in general, man, having like this strategy, tactical type of RPG, but obviously a bit more accessible because it's aimed at a younger audience, but then crossing over with Rabbids, but still having it be Mario where they're like shooting guns and having all these like crazy movements and skills and RPG mechanics. It is such a great game, man. Between this and Sparks of Hope as well, I really hope we can get like a full trilogy out of this and get another game where maybe they can bring in even more characters, because obviously with this we had Mario & Rabbids and then the Donkey Kong DLC, and then Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope just kind of, you know, just did the same thing but again on a slightly bigger scale, taking the story and, you know, kind of expanding on it. But for the next one, I would love to see it be like almost like a Super Smash Bros type of thing where you bring in like Zelda, Donkey Kong, and you give us like a Rabbids version of Zelda and Link, and then you give us like a Rabbids version of Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong and all of that, and just get absolutely wild with it. Get Samus in there, give us a Rabbids version of Samus, man. I don't know, go crazy with it, bring in the Animal Crossing characters. There was so much potential there, but yeah, man, I love the Mario & Rabbids games. Those games are absolutely fantastic, and you know, they're not like some RPGs where it'll take you dozens and dozens of hours. You can easily clear it out in like a weekend or so. So if you ever see them out for cheap, which Kingdom Battle and Sparks of Hope are always going for less than like 20 bucks. Definitely pick them up, especially on the eShop because the DLC is always going on sale for those games. Fantastic. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. We had talked about that before. This was a great spin-off for the series. I loved being able to play as Chloe and Nadine from Uncharted 4 because obviously Chloe is, you know, she was there for almost the entire series. She was introduced in Uncharted 2, but, you know, I always loved her character, and obviously, I mean, she's freaking gorgeous. And then Nadine is like, I mean, excuse my language here, but she's a badass, man. She was whooping Nate like there was no tomorrow in Uncharted 4. And I was like, dude, like the first time I saw her, I was like, all right, Nate, you know, take it easy. But then, nah, she just started whooping him, throwing him around the room, into the bookshelves and the tables and all that. I was like, dude, this chick ain't messing around. Despite the fact that Lost Legacy is more or less just kind of like a spin-off in a way, or just kind of like an alternate story, just kind of like off the beaten path. If we're gonna get any more Uncharted games, which I know they've already kind of said that, hey, we're kind of done with Uncharted, or at the very least, we're done with Nathan Drake's story, you know, I love to follow Chloe some more, because again, I mean, not only is she freaking gorgeous, but she's also just an amazing character in general. I love her personality, she's super badass, and yeah, I would love to see another Uncharted game with her, and maybe, who knows, maybe in some of the other females in the Uncharted games. Next up, also, like, following maybe, like, Sully and like, Nathan Drake's brother, because obviously by the end of Uncharted 4, they kind of all, like, went their separate ways, so it would be cool to kind of see, like, you know, what are the other characters up to, whether it be, like, prequel games, seeing, like, some of their past, or maybe, like, sequel games, seeing where they went afterwards. Like, it'd be pretty cool. But hey, if they don't want to do that, and they just kind of want to leave it at where it is with the Lost Legacy in 4, I mean, things wrapped up in a way to where I'd be like, okay, you know what, it's fine just leaving it there, because not every game needs to be a super long series with, like, dozens of entries. Sometimes, and I would even say, in fact, more times than not, it is best, especially for games like this that are so story heavy, to just say, hey, this is the end. These are these games. In the future, maybe we'll release like remakes and remasters, but beyond that, these stories are told, we're moving on. So, you know, if that's what they want to do, that actually just makes me respect them even more for having the guts to do that, and for just leaving the story in the perfect state that it is. Dragon Ball FighterZ, I mean, there's not much for me to say there. Dragon Ball FighterZ is a fantastic fighting game, man. The way that they took the Dragon Ball art style and adapted it to this 2D fighting game, obviously we've had that many times before in the past. Like, you know, we've been getting games like that for decades, but just, you know, in the modern lens, on the modern consoles, with the crisp visuals and the different combos and the way that the combat feels and the other mechanics in the game, like outside of the fighting, when it comes to like customizing your character and all that, like, it is just such a great game, man. Had a great story mode too. AC Origins, a nice spin. That was essentially like the soft reboot of AC, where we got this, and then Odyssey and Valhalla, and I always adored this game, man. Going to ancient Egypt, that was so cool. You know, as much as I love these newer games, I am glad that they still went back and made a game like AC Mirage that harkens back to the old school days of AC. You know, because again, I love Origins and Odyssey and Valhalla, these RPG type games, but man, Mirage was just like, yeah, you know, because obviously I have a lot of nostalgia for the first few Assassin's Creed, like AC 1 and 2 and stuff like that, so I'm glad that they're still giving us OG fans our fix there, but I am really excited for Shadows, which seems like it's going to be like more like one of these bigger scale games here. State of Decay 2, I put a ton of time into that one with my friends back in the day. Sea of Thieves, I played this one a good bit, put a good dozen hours into it, I want to say. It's one of those games where I had a lot of fun with it, I just haven't had the chance to go back to it since. There's been a lot of updates to it though, like I saw like Jack Sparrow was in the game, so I'll have to revisit it one day. Middle-earth, Shadow of War. It's a shame that WB decided to patent the whole Nemesis system and just kind of like keep it to themselves, because like, man, the way that Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor utilized that Nemesis system was absolutely insane, and it's something that we haven't seen to this day yet, but we will see it here soon with the upcoming Wonder Woman game, because they are going to be utilizing the Nemesis system there. But it's still so cool in that game when you like fight an enemy, or you like leave somebody behind, or one thing or another happens, and then they come back like hours later and they're like, hey, you thought I was dead, didn't I? Well, no, now I'm about to whoop your butt, boy. Skull and Bones. I'm just kidding, we'll talk about Skull and Bones. This is one of those games where I bought it. I'm not, like, okay, I enjoyed the game, you know, because I love AC4 and I love the ship combat and all that. It's a fun video game, but at the same time, once you play through it, it's just sort of like, yeah, you know, it's a lot of fun to play through the game and all that, but why did they try to make a live service out of this? They really should have just made it a single player experience. You play through the game, you get your fix, and that's that. You know, you experience the story, you experience what the game has to offer, but instead they're doing what every, you know, studio try to do nowadays, trying to make it a live service, market it as like quadruple A and this, that, and the other. It's just like, dude, they should have just made it a smaller title. Maybe, you know, even if you wanted to make it like along the same lines as like a Far Cry or an AC in terms of like giving it that big marketing push, which clearly they put a good bit of marketing into it. I don't know, it's just one of those things where I feel like it would have been better off just being its own experience, just that being that. But, you know, again, once I played through it and then I kind of just started to see more of the live service elements coming through, I was like, alright, you know what, I already got my playthrough in. I'm not sticking around for the live service stuff. Anytime a game has live service elements, I'll play through the main story, play through the main content, and then once it gets to the end game stuff, like same thing happened with the Marvel's Avengers. I played through the main story, got to the end game, grind, live service stuff, and I just stopped playing. I went back to play the expansions, of course, because the expansions in the DLC in Marvel's Avengers was great, but like the live service stuff, I'm sorry, man. I play Call of Duty. I've been playing Call of Duty since Finest Hour on the PS2, so, you know, I'm very loyal to that series, and I'll stick with that game and its live service elements just because I played the game so much that the live service elements don't bother me. It's just like, hey, there's more content for me to play. Here's another battle pass to grind. I enjoy it in that game, but when every game is trying to do it, I'm sorry, man. Live service gotta go. Far Cry 5, an amazing Far Cry game. Madden NFL 18, oh boy. Madden is fun, but it's one of those franchises where I just kind of pop in every couple years, you know. I'll pop in, play through the campaign mode, since they actually have those now, like full-on story modes with cutscenes and such, so I like playing through those. They're fun. I enjoy playing sports games, I just don't enjoy sports IRL, you know what I mean? Like, I enjoy playing Madden and NBA and stuff like that, but at the same time, usually, like, it's not like I'm gonna buy a Madden full price every single year. It's like, once it gets into a subscription, or it's in a bargain bin, or it's going for less than 10 bucks, then I'll pick up the recent Madden. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not gonna pump out like 60 to 70 bucks for it. Hunt Showdown, nice. Days Gone, super underrated game, man. I love Days Gone. I absolutely love it. It is a shame that we could never get a sequel to it, because there was talks about it, but then obviously, you know, we all know how that went. But man, I absolutely adore that game. That game is absolutely fantastic, and it's a shame that others didn't seem to feel that way, or that it didn't sell as well. I'm not sure how the game did sales-wise, but I'm pretty sure that this is one of those games that didn't meet Sony's expectations, whether that be critically or financially, hence the reason we didn't get even like a sequel or a remaster or anything like, you know, for it yet. I absolutely love that game though. I just realized we're only on 20, so we're gonna, oh man, there really is 50 here. Okay, we're not gonna sit, oh, if you're wondering why there's, you know, like sticky notes on the back, it's just because I didn't want to, you know, like dox my father, because even though we don't talk, even though we don't get along, his address is still under these sticky notes, so I didn't want to do that. Anyway, we're gonna speed things up, so we still have 30 to go, and we're a good way into this video by now, so A Way Out, that was that really fun, like, co-op, break out of prison type of game. It's genuinely a lot of fun. If you find somebody to play with, definitely give it a shot. Splatoon 2, the start of Splatoon on the Nintendo Switch. I absolutely adore Splatoon, as I'm sure many of you do as well. I've been playing since the first one on Wii U, and since then, since the first time I played the game, I was like, yup, I'm hooked on the series. I've been sticking with it since. I love the single players in this game. I do play the multiplayers from time to time, but I'm one of those people where I mainly just go in and play the single players because I'm a single player gamer. I mainly just play games for their story modes, see what their main story has to offer, and then, you know, if there's like a multiplayer element, I'll try it out, but usually, I don't know, I just, yeah, you know, I play from time to time, but not something I'm going to stick with long term, as I mentioned with the live service stuff before. But man, when it comes to at least like the single player stuff and the multiplayer stuff that I played in both Splatoon 2 and 3, fantastic games. Matterfall, we just talked about that earlier, love that game. South Park, The Fractured But Whole, the South Park games are absolutely amazing. They truly do capture the essence of the shows, and I do recommend them. I'd recommend playing the Stick of Truth first, since that is technically the first one in the series. You don't have to, but you can like play that and then go to this just to see how things have evolved. Metroid Samus Returns, an absolutely fantastic remake of the original Game Boy game, Metroid 2. Crackdown 3, it's a shame that this one kind of ended up you know, like, just going below the radar a bit by the time that it actually released. I didn't end up dabbling with the multiplayer too much. I did a little bit, but not much, but I played the single player, and I absolutely loved it. It was a lot of fun. Battle Chasers Night War, another one where I haven't heard too many people talk about this one, but this game is a lot of fun too, and I believe it's still available on PS Plus, so if you haven't played it before, and if you have like PS Plus Extra, definitely download it and give it a shot. That game is really fun. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but if you're into like dungeon crawling type of stuff, that kind of atmosphere, but you also like turn-based RPGs, that'll definitely be right up your alley. You know, you can even see with like the art style there, like, you know, it's very classic in the way that it feels, kind of like harkening back to some of those old school JRPGs and such, while still having some of those other features like I mentioned with like the dungeon crawling type of stuff and the turn-based stuff. So yeah, I love that game. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, I don't care what anybody says, I had fun with it. Some people kind of dunked on like the art style or this, that, or the other, or maybe the character roster. It's still a really fun game. Sure, I do end up going back more to like, you know, MVC 3 or MVC 2, if I'm going to be honest, when it comes to going back and revisiting an MVC game, but there's also a lot of nostalgia for that, right? You know, I'm like really nostalgic for MVC 3 and 2, so that's also part of it, but Infinite, it's still a great game. Detroit Become Human, dude, such a good game. It's just such a good game. This was made by the same creators of like Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, so if you're familiar with like the Telltale games, for example, it's sort of along the lines of that, but you know, just like more realistic, obviously, as you can see with the with the graphics. And man, Detroit Become Human, that is a game that I genuinely need to go back and replay sometime soon, just because, I mean, there's so many different ways it can go. Like, there's different choices you can make, different outcomes and endings you can get, and it's just, such a great game, man. FIFA 18, you know, we already kind of talked about that with, like, the Madden stuff before. The Artful Escape, yes, oh my gosh, this one is so good. I love this game so much. So, essentially, this is like a 2D adventure sort of game. I don't know how else to explain it. It's basically, it's one of those games where you play it for the experience of playing it, where you're going to be going through, you're going to be playing your guitar, and, like, as you play the guitar, it'll interact with like different parts of the environment sometimes, and there's like certain like platforming sections to it. But again, it's not necessarily a challenging game. It's more about the experience. It's more about the story. Definitely play it with headphones or like surround sounds on. And oh man, I can't tell you how many times I was like smiling to an extent of where I was shedding tears, because like the gradual progression from like, you know, his humble beginnings to the point of where he's like genuinely like ripping like full-on solos towards the end of the game, man. I love The Artful Escape. It's one of those games where you point at it and just say that is a masterpiece. Like, it is a pure work of art. I adore The Artful Escape. Please play it. I don't know if it's on Game Pass or like PS Plus Extra. I believe it's still on PS Plus. I don't know if it's still on Game Pass. It was before, but man, that game is so good. Forza Motorsport 7. It's unfortunate that that game got delisted before the most recent Forza Motorsport could even release, but that's just kind of how it goes with racing games, unfortunately. Sonic Mania, we already talked about that. Great 2D platformer. Life is Strange Before the Storm. Love the Life is Strange series. I will say, Life is Strange True Colors. If I had to recommend any game as a, you know, starting point, because obviously now it can kind of be like, where do I start? There's Life is Strange 1, Life is Strange 2, Before the Storm. All of them are absolutely fantastic games, but I will say True Colors is one of those games where it genuinely put me into tears by the end. I mean, don't get me wrong, these other games, they had me in tears too, but there's something about the personalness of this story in True Colors to where it's like, if you're looking for that one story where it'll, like, no matter who you are it will resonate with you in some way just due to the emotional weight of the story. It is so good. Ni no Kuni 2, just, you know, I mean, it's a sequel to an amazing RPG, and this in itself was an amazing RPG. I still have my original copy on PS3 of the original one, and then I also have this one on PS4. Ni no Kuni, fantastic games. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I mean, like, I'm starting to sound like a broken record here. Another fantastic game. And this is what that's what I was saying. Like, E3 this year was just absolutely insane, dude. Like, so many fantastic games on every page. There was just hit after hit, banger after banger. Danganronpa V3. Again, another banger, man. Danganronpa, one of the best visual novel series of all time. I still go back and play them on my Vita. Like, I love Danganronpa. XCOM 2, War of the Chosen, man, that was a great expansion. XCOM 2 was such a fantastic game, and it's a shame because, you know, since the game is in a bit more of like a niche genre, I want to say, not as many people probably tried it as, you know, compared to like something like the new Call of Duty, for example, but definitely give the XCOM games a chance, you know, like if you ever see it on sale, or they're even on like the subscription services like PS Plus, I know it's on there. Definitely give XCOM a chance, man. I love those games. XCOM 2 is like the most recent one, but then there's also like Enemy Unknown and Enemy Within and all that. So definitely do your research and just find a point to dive in and at least try out the games, because they're really good. Call of Cthulhu, another one that unfortunately ended up kind of going below the radar, but similar to The Artful Escape, it's a great experience type of game. There's definitely more gameplay involved here, but it's definitely more of like that experience type of game, but it's really good. Minute, an amazing throwback. I love this era of like the 2010s where we had a bunch of these amazing indies coming out, and I always love the art style of Minute, because obviously, you know, it's more old school, but it's still like black and white and all that. It's always stuck out aesthetically. Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, man, the Yakuza, that series has been getting so much love lately from RGG. They literally just announced another game coming out next year, which is just insane, man. Just hit after hit. That series is fantastic. If you don't know where to dive in there, I would definitely recommend going with Yakuza Kiwami, just because that's a remake of the first game. Some people will tell you 0, but I'm gonna say no. Play the games in release order. Go like Yakuza 1 to 2 to 3, and then once you get to the point of where 0 would have been released in the series, then go back and play 0. I accidentally just knocked my camera over, and I just realized that I'm also running low on storage, so we kind of got to pick up the pace like really quick here, because I only have a few minutes left before my camera runs out of storage. So Fire Emblem Warriors, it's a warrior style Fire Emblem game. I mean, if you played one Warriors game, you've essentially played them all, but it's still one of those games where I still pick them up and play them every time, just because there's so much fun just going in, hacking to slash at thousands of enemies. Frostpunk, I cannot wait for Frostpunk 2. These are essentially like survival sim management type games, but oh my gosh, this game will give you existential dread and crisis at every turn. It's like, okay, who do I do for what person? Do I give you this thing, or do I give it to the other person that really needs it? Do I use this resource for this? Do I use it for that? Like, it will seriously have you like in an existential crisis at every turn. It is fantastic, but yeah, it'll definitely trigger a few anxiety attacks. At least it did for me. Ys 8, an underrated RPG series. I mean, and in my mind, it seems to be underrated just because not that many people seem to talk about it, but man, those games are absolutely fantastic. So if you ever get the chance to try them, it's very similar to Final Fantasy, where you don't need to necessarily play all of them. It can be helpful for context from time to time, but most of the stories are standalone, so if you even wanted to wait until the new one comes out, Ys 10 Nordics, you'd be fine to just dive in there, but the Ys games are fantastic. Pro Evolution Soccer 2018, Laser League, Steven Universe, Save the Light. Man, I miss these licensed games. We still have licensed games coming out, but man, I really miss those old school licensed games. Obviously, 2017 isn't really old school licensed games, but I don't know, every time I see games like this, it just takes me back to my childhood with like the PS2, the GameCube, the original Xbox, and the PS1, just like all the licensed games we had coming out around that time, like Battle for Bikini Bottom, or Shrek 2, or the Spider-Man games, or other things like that. Kingdom Come Deliverance, masterpiece. Cannot wait for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which was just announced recently. Definitely a day one pickup there. Need for Speed Payback, that game was great. We got Lawbreakers, and then finally Vampire, which is another one that unfortunately seemed to kind of fly below the radar, but I really enjoyed that game as well. A lot of fun, like different like decision making in that game, and the way that you approach various situations, and the, you know, I mean, it literally says it right here, like choosing who lives and dies. Like, seriously, that game was absolutely fantastic as well. But there it is. We have gone through the E3 top 50, and after that, that's basically the end of the magazine. So they have a thing here saying enter for a chance to win a 7-day trip for 2 to San Diego. Then you go in here and What else are they talking about here? Yeah, they're just kind of highlighting some other games. Dirt 4, Tekken 7. Yeah, Tekken 7 is great. I really enjoyed the story mode in that game. It was super cinematic. Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age. That is a great Final Fantasy right there. Friday the 13th. Man, I remember all the YouTube videos on that game when that game came out, man. Just seeing people like scream their head off as they were playing that game. That game was always a lot of really tense fun. Being able to unlock all the costumes for Jason was pretty cool as well. And then... and now we're basically at the end here. ARMS for Nintendo Switch. Definitely make sure you're wearing the straps when you play that game. Otherwise, that's very similar to the Wii, where it's like, yeah, you know, it's all fun and games. You're throwing your punches. You think you're winning until you throw your Joy-Con through your TV. Definitely wouldn't be as lethal as throwing a Wiimote through your TV, but... still, you don't want to be whacking your TV with your Joy-Cons, but yeah, ARMS is a lot of fun. Ever Oasis was a great game too. I always loved the art style in that game. Real cutesy, real comforting and all that. And yeah, there it is. There's a score. They just give a score for a couple of games coming out, and yeah, and then they got a bit of a reviews archive at the end. What's this? Missing in Action. Sometimes you expect to see a title at E3, but then it no-shows the biggest gaming event of the year. These are the previously announced games that had the most conspicuous absences at the show. Below, Death Stranding, Dreams, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Last of Us Part 2, Wild, Visceral Star Wars Project. Aw, man, if you know, you know. Shenmue 3, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and then Red Dead Redemption 2, which ended up coming out the next year anyway. A thing for Breath of the Wild, and then when we flip it over to the back... oh, wow, it literally runs through the top 50 on the back, so if I wanted to, I literally could have just flipped this over and ran through this rather than, you know, going through the magazine, but that obviously wouldn't have been the same. I wanted to actually flip through the magazine with you guys, see what the E3 Hot 50 that were that year, and just, you know, also read through some of the things that were saying, see what was going on, and, man, talk about a trip down memory lane. This was super nostalgic for me, and I don't know, man. I miss E3, I miss Game Informer, and yeah. I don't know. That was a lot of fun. I hope you guys had fun as well. But anyways, yeah, I probably have mere seconds before my camera runs out of storage now, so I gotta be careful. But anyway, if you guys want more videos like this where I go through like old Game Informer magazines or maybe old like Guinness World Record stuff, just whatever it is, you know, I would definitely love to do that. So just let me know. But anyways, always mass shout out, thank you to all the patrons and channel members. Thank you to all of you in the low baller tier, and every shout out, thank you to the big baller tier, Mel asking, and big dad man in the big shout out, thank you on G tier, run event, someone cheese go. Thank you guys so much. You guys are literal legends. I love you. Have an amazing day. Stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.